and torturing European women who didn't want to collaborate with the masters, while their men were sent into the desert sand without water to make sure they wouldn't make it back to Europe to defend their women and save them from the stakes of the Swiss Inquisition. As the Spanish, they never burned any women. Same technique repeated by Napoleon and Hitler to send French and German soldiers into the Russian winter without warm clothes and without sufficient food supply to make sure they wouldn't come back, creating either sand mummies during the Crusades or show mummies, snow mummies in the Second World War or by Napoleon. And when the Templars of Pharaonic origin came into Switzerland, they were talking French and called the place Suisse, for Sœurs d'Isis, the Sisters of Isis. Also because traditionally French has always been and still is the language of the entire European nobility, even in Germany, Poland, England, Russia, the Netherlands, everywhere. This is why later on French became the diplomatic language, with the diplomatic center, Geneva of course, their motherland. Pharaohs of ancient Egypt have never disappeared, and their actual base is Switzerland. Nice and central in the middle of it all, on the water tap and money tap of Europe, and where they talk 4 different languages for bringing havoc to Europe in 4 wind directions. Those who speak German to the north and infiltrate the Germans, French into France in the west, Italian into Italy south, and Rheto-Romanic to the east. Oh, very smart indeed. Well, the Templars were the first multinationals in history, and this is the result. Their base in the Alps stretching out in all directions, being the cause of the CIA and NATO's compass showing north, west, south, and east. As Switzerland operates in all directions, linguistically, financially, militarily, you name it. And they're all Templar organizations, you know, the NATO and the Central Intelligence, the first director, and all these directors. There was Swiss, Allen Dulles, Templar stuff. So CIA, NATO, they're all Octagon Templar organization from Switzerland. In the Bible, the Quran and the Torah, it says that Pharaoh and his army drowned and disappeared in the sea. But hey guys, that doesn't mean they all disappeared. There was only one you're talking about. But they had sons, daughters, cousins and uncles. What about them, silly? And what about all the other pharaohs we know? We know there were more than one. There was Akhenaton, Ramses the Great, Tutankhamun, Cleopatra, and hundreds more. What about them bunch then? Okay, let me explain it to you. Of course the sea didn't just open up just like that and swallows them like a predator. It's a metaphor, as these books are full of. In the Bible, the sea is symbolic for the sea of peoples. So Pharaoh disappeared into the sea of peoples. They are amongst us and so mixed with us that we cannot even recognize them anymore. And neither can they. That's why they need secret handshakes and secret symbols to recognize each other, and secret societies to get to know each other. And this is why more than 50% of the Europeans carry the pharaonic DNA in their blood, which has been discovered around 2009. In Switzerland, that's more than 90%. But of course, the prostitutes of the mainstream media, they turned it the other way around. And they say that here in the newspaper, that the pharaohs, they come from Europe. But no, they injected their pharaonic genetics into our women. I will explain it to you. And when the pharaohs came to Europe, they built castles everywhere to conquer Europe and the Europeans. So they became the aristocracy with their blue blood and blue for the war. Because of them, we have wars without end throughout history. Reminds you there are no castles in Europe before the year 1000, and there are no European kings from us, the white people. There is not such a thing as an original European king. It's all import from Egypt and forced upon our lives through terror, rape, bloodshed, wars, and many lies and deceit. Wake up, people, and see Pharaoh with their blue aristocratic blood thrashing down into humanity. Castles from the year 1000s are extremely rare, so roughly speaking, there were no castles from before the year 1000, and there were no aristocrats from before the year 1000. There was no nobility before the year 1000. So, where did they all come from, all of a sudden, eh? Well, we know who the builders are with their pyramids, viaducts and squares and compasses, don't we know? Not even 100 years ago it was still perfectly clear that everything belonged to the aristocracy, the nobility, the land, the power, and even our women through the first rite of the jus prime noctis, the bride having her first night after the wedding with the lord in his royal bed in the castle. That's why so many Swissies have that cold pharaonic genetics running through their veins, meaning that the aristocracy are the descendants of Pharaoh, who injected their pharaonic genetics into the whole of our women on that first night, if you know what I mean. Or do you really think that the aristocracy just left it all 100 years ago and just gave all the power on earth away to some politicians and their police state? No. And like Pharaoh and the aristocracy, today's ruling elite still don't talk with us and still only marry amongst themselves. Because it's still the same bloodline, just changing jackets. And because there were too many uprisings, especially in Russia and France, the aristocracy decided to entirely rule through secret Freemason lodges. Yes, affirmative. All today's politicians are both Freemasons and aristocrats and descendants of Pharaoh. It's because of that Freemasons worship these cult objects of their ancestors from ancient Egypt, like obelisks, pyramids, the all-seeing eye, Horus, etc., the entire ancestral tradition. As a fact, more and more descendants of Pharaoh were born over the years in the various castles of Europe, who all wanted to be the king, thus leading to various wars between kings, castles, and royal lineages, fights about kings who wanted to stay king forever, passed the kingship down to their children and all descendants ever after. There were more and more sires, and pharaohs who all wanted to be the king. And that's why one war followed up the other, in which the normal man, we, only let his life and do the wars for them, as on a chessboard, therefore the Freemason checkerboard configuration. At a certain point, they agreed it couldn't go on like this any longer and constantly destroying it all. There had to come a new system, a system in which any one of them could be the king for a period of 4, 5, or 7 years. And so, democracy, the hidden feudal system, was born. But who's going to vote? Because none of us is neutral, they said. Well, let's create a sort of circus in which we let the people vote, or the demos in Greek. The people will vote in a sort of rotating dictatorship in which all the political candidates are pure Tsar and pharaonic nobility, who in fact, when voted for, radiate this air of personal happiness, because they just got elected to be the king and pharaoh for a period of 4 years. Democracy is their cynical word, meaning that the people rules. That's why there are the Bilderberger, an all-controlling internal organization which already existed during the times of kings, but under another name, to solve the internal troubles of these pharaohs amongst themselves. Problems like succession and world domination. The latter they call with a euphemist expression globalization, a soft expression for world domination in Pharaonic, equally representing this new system called the New World Order, executed through Freemasonry, through which any of them can become the king for a period of 4, 5, or 7 years. But who's gonna vote? A member asked. Oh, let's have the people vote, another said, because they're so dumb and stupid and will never understand anything. And at the same time, we make them think that the people are ruling. Like that we keep them happy, satisfied and peaceful. But in fact, democracy is not for and by the people, but for our rulers, so they can be elected democratically. And as soon as they're elected, they'll do what they please anyway. So there is no self-government by the people, and there never has been any either. And so democracy was born out of the aristocracy, a new feudal system with a thin layer of gentlemen's camouflage, altogether ruling from a thing they've cynically called parliament, etymologically from the French parlement, from parler et mentir, to talk and to lie. It's all straight in our faces. Parlement. And Switzerland is the oldest New World Order democracy in the world. So let's get to the bottom of it. If there is a New World Order, then logically there should have been a predecessor called the Old World Order. Otherwise there wouldn't be a new one, right? So what is this Old World Order then? Well, it's the old feudal system of kings, queens, princes and princesses, following the system of the firstborn or primogeniture. And out of the Templars, with their Swiss base, were born Freemasonry and their New World Order, consequently to solve their internal wars of the Old World Order, like the persecutions of the Templars by the French king Philip the Fair, who refused to surrender his reign and throne to the new system called New World Order, also entitling second, third and fourth sons to power. This is why the Templars of the New World Order and their Swiss mercenaries were in La Bastille in Paris, where they tortured French citizens and terrorized the French people through hunger, inflicting famine and persecution to provoke the revolution, so the people would rise against the monarch to finish off the Old World Order. And so it happened in 1793, 3 years or 4 years after the French Revolution, when the French King Louis XVI lost his head, and the Queen too, 2 heads in the basket. The same happened in Russia barely 100 years later with the Tsar family. Same technique applied. Never in history there has been a revolution by the people, but they were a transition from the Old World Order to the New World Order.